Since I plan on completing all of the dungeons solo flawless, I might as well get started with doing the dungeon solo first. So here I am at the Pit of Heresy. The reason I decided to choose the pit is because the week I did this was the dungeon on rotation and I needed the pinnacle drop. I know, great motivation and reasoning. Besides, it doesn't really matter what order I tackle them in, but I suppose the release order makes the most sense. In any case, the reason I didn't solo the Shattered Throne is because I did not feel like it before doing this. I still have PTSD from Vorgath and the catwalks, and while I almost certainly could complete it, I just felt like, changing up the scenery, and I decided to tackle the Pit of Heresy. The first time I completed this, I was completely carried, so doing this solo after a few months of, not having any knowledge of what is happening should help, make things exciting, since I'm not exactly too sure on what I need to do, mainly in the next couple of encounters. This first encounter is a streamlined version of the first encounter of the Shattered Throne in the Erebus, and we basically just need to find the central platform, of which I almost fall off the ledge off and die. Great start, good job me. Really bringing my A game here. But once I recover, I can pick off these hive foes with no problem. The hive are honestly one of the easier enemy types to deal with. And I don't have to deal with any Lucent Hive at this time either, since this is of course attached to Shadowkeep. So honestly, this is pretty easy to deal with so far. Now, after picking up the relic, I almost forget to take a look at the symbols on the gates. Once I remember the symbols, just gotta go and head on over to those locations. This is much simpler than having to remember, having to go to all the symbols and all of the towers in Erebus while it's also pitch black. So at least here in the pit, we have some spooky lighting from, the hive aesthetics, but it's way more visible than Shattered Throne. Regardless, the mechanic of the first section is pretty interesting because it's related to the sword, and of course the hive follows sword logic. So here we are utilizing all the mechanics enshrined within the sword. So of course, depending on the enemy we need to defeat, our nice AI, taking a while. Depending on the enemy, we need to use a certain type of move. So it seems like for this shielded knight, we just need to go ahead and use our light attacks. This took longer than it really should have, but I was trying to not die. I suppose I could have comboed with the sword better, I don't know, but here I am just keeping track of the symbols and where I need to go. I had to do a lot of running around when fighting the knight for no good reason. It's not like I'm doing a speed run or anything, so it's not even like that's a problem. I did leave the blade alone as I'm trying to take care of the knight and ogres from the distance, as they are what will knock me off. Specifically the ogres. I know for a fact I will get hit by an ogre blast and get knocked off into the abyss and have to restart the section, so I really want to avoid that. I also don't think I'm going to get flawless, but I would like to maintain that status for as long as possible. And at least in this section, I know there's no reason for me to die, because the sections where death are the most permanent are coming up really soon. Alright, after reacquiring the relic, I can go ahead and attack the Shrieker. So using the Shrieker requires us to utilize the block mechanic, but because the block can be sustained forever and it just uses charges of the weapon, it's almost certainly the easiest of the enemies to take care of. So that's step 2 of using a sword logic. I suppose I could talk about my loadout. I'm a Warlock, Getaways Artist. That was what was hot at the time of the final shape. Even now, it's still probably among the best. I mean, I'm not exactly keeping track of what is good or not right now, but still has shown no signs of being weak, because with Prismatic it's a fairly powerful synergy. Secondary is Forbearance, just a waveframe launcher, just switching things up. I really need a better secondary energy weapon, but I don't have one that's good and single focused, or sorry, like a single target energy weapon. That still takes me a little longer to get. I mean, I guess I do have stuff like, Still Hunt and other exotics, but I'm more so talking about just a good legendary energy weapon. I did not have one at the time of this dungeon, so I'm just using the Wayframe Launcher, which I only mention as being bad because a Wayframe Launcher and the Verglas Curve conflict in their role completely, right? Like, the Verglas Curve is an ad clear bow, but using Forbearance for ad clear as well as a grenade launcher is also, a little bit scuffed. It would be better if I could just, have each weapon fulfill its own role, but nonetheless, it doesn't really matter because it's not like the enemies here are all that difficult. In any case, this section where we have to fight off against the wizards require us to use our heavy power attack, which is basically a energy blast. Unfortunately, I'm basically run out of charges, so I have to go and find another relic, which is incredibly annoying. Great waste of time. Like, I literally had to run all the way back to the beginning section in order to take care of the sword bearer. Like, wow. What am I doing here, by the way? Look at my movements. So scuffed. But yes, the fact that I had to come back and pick up this relic shows that, my movement could be more streamlined. I probably could have picked a better path. Maybe I should just ignore the enemies and just focus on the bosses instead of, wasting time. But, it's good to be safe, but also the amount of time wasted cannot be, unaccounted for. This was very inefficient. All right, the Omen of the Broken Blade. The wizard goes down, and with that, all 3 of the seals should be unlocked, so we can go ahead and progress. Conveniently, a giant green laser points us in the correct direction. Very convenient, like inhumanly convenient, but I do appreciate it, preventing us from wasting time, even though I wasted time going back to the entrance. All right, we can go ahead and continue forward. Honestly, I didn't die once. I wasn't even threatened to die, except for when I had to use the sword to kill the first knight. But overall, that was an incredibly easy section and way easier, way simpler, much smoother than, the first section of Shattered Throne. So we can move on. I already knew where the light was since I spotted it from last time. I did remember its general direction. And so I can continue my descent down. With this, we've officially entered the pit. And we've also entered the worst section of this dungeon by far. And I don't mean most difficult, I mean the most annoying. These tunnel systems, took me a while to wrap my head around, and I don't even know if my head completely wrapped around it. Like, there's probably still some blind spots missing that, need to be folded over. But my current goal is just to figure out where I need to go. So the problem with this area and location is that 1, the light is limited. 2, the ogres that you have to ignore are immune to all damage, so they're basically unkillable and you have to avoid them. And there's 3 of them, and all the hallways you have to walk through are tight, corridors where, you are pushed into the view of the ogres and their blasts. So this makes it very, very hectic. So gameplay wise, it's not terrible, but what makes it actually terrible is the layout being the most confusing mess to keep track of all time. Because you have to deposit these void charges into their respective slots in order to break the barrier, in order to continue. But trying to figure out where these spots are without looking up a map was honestly a miserable experience. I waste so much time just having these void charges in my hand or running around all of the tunnels and never being able to find my way through. Like, I literally need to break out a piece of paper and a pen and chart out my course in order to figure out where the hell I'm going. At least at the start. It does, I do eventually figure it out, but it takes me forever. And that forever is in a long time for now. I'm just gonna, I do at least remember the very obvious first exit spot, which is at the end of this passageway here. So this should be the first one that I deposit. And this is also where we will continue forward. So it's good to know that I did the last one first. Just have 2 more to go, and I have no idea where I need to go in order to do that. Like, I loop back in circles over and over again. Like, this section is actually a headache. I'm getting nausea just rewatching my gameplay of this section. I do want to point out that the details on the wall are quite disgusting. Like, seeing the worms slither around and the fossilized hive garbage is quite disgusting. So imagining, crawling around the site is not pleasant. And here it wasn't even the ogre, it was me. I just ran off the cliff and die. So honestly, that's flawless over with and ruined, or was it saying there goes flawless, I believe. So there goes flawless. Completely my fault, but I don't think I was making any progress to begin with. So the second time around, what I decided to do is, just since I already died, is to scout out the locations of where the void charges need to go in the first place, and then, work backwards from there. Like here, I pick up the void charge immediately after destroying the very first section. I can go ahead and plug that in. So with that, I've already gone ahead and completed one of the gates, and I don't have to worry about it. So already we've started off much better the second time around compared to the first, and already making some headway. As I notice, once again, I noticed where I need to deposit charge, and the room next to it has the void charge. So this strategy clearly was way better of figuring out where I needed to deposit charges first before acquiring the charges. Of course, the ogre is, still a giant, still a giant blocking my way. I almost died to it. I got pretty lucky with, being able to heal thanks to my, warlock abilities and Phoenix diving down, and, how the ogre, was not completely focused on me. I mean, I'm just filling up airtime as I work towards the last and final void charge location. I do believe, since I did the 2 at the end, this one is near the beginning. But of course, finding it is more important, along with not dying. All right, so as I head back to try to go to the secret entrance, I walked off the edge twice. Both times I've died so far, it's just been me just walking off the edge for no reason. Like, you want to hit, I apparently I don't know how to use my jump. Typical warlock moments for sure, but at least with the plan solidified, I know more of what I need to do and how to do it. It's just executing it is a little bit annoying, because of the ogres. All right, I pick up the 3rd void charge, but due to the ogres, guiding my path, I had to take some very inefficient routing methods, and I actually ended up grabbing the void charge from the very beginning of the map, or the encounter. Hopefully I don't die this time as I try to jump to the lower platform. Wow, nice. Finally, 3rd time is a charm. Go ahead and avoid the ogre with the void charge in hand, and then go ahead and make my way to the final resting place to unlock the gates. Boom, extinguished. And that completed the 2nd encounter. There's no rest for the wicked as the ogres flee, and we enter the Chamber of Suffering. The location is named so because we were placed under a curse called the Curse of Suffering. Fairly apt name for the conditions that we must survive under. Here we have to also babysit not just the debuff curse, which if we accumulate enough stacks of, we will eventually die too, but also baby the Annihilation Tomb that I am sitting underneath. If I stray too far from the totem for too long, the fire will extinguish all light, which is not good because I will have to restart this entire room. In order to alleviate the curse, we must take care of heretical knights and collect their void charges. Their void charges will then be deposited into the the dunk box in the back of the room, and each charge will also take care of one of the seals. There are 6 in total blocking the door, so we just need to collect 5 more. Depositing the void charges also removes some stacks of the debuff from us. That allows us to stay alive longer in order to, complete the room. So with these 2 mechanics at play, the other problem at hand is the amount of adds. Luckily, on normal difficulty and with my specific build, aka, Verglass Curve and Getaways, ad clear is not a problem. In fact, ad clear is the easiest thing for me to do. It's DPS is where the issues come in, but that's not really something I need to worry about in this room. So honestly, while this room might be more stressful and at a master difficulty, even solo, it's not too bad because I assume that I've just power crept past the amount of ads spawning in. It's still don't get me wrong, the amount of the ad density is still pretty high, and in masters I definitely need to be way better with my positioning and making sure I'm using my abilities more effectively, because I don't think I ever use my super once. I'm not ever really keeping track of prismatic all that well. It's that minor stuff that will bite me in the ass at the higher difficulties. But at least on normal, honestly, this room is pretty easy. So it's just a matter of killing the heretical knights, picking up the void charges, returning back to the annihilator totem, and not dying. Sounds kind of complicated, and initially when I was introduced to this room and told about it, when I was carried through the first time around, I was worried about this room in particular, but honestly it's not that bad. I think that's because, okay, well, I say it's not that bad, but the when it comes to myself, I don't know what to say. Truly, the most difficult enemy is always yourself. We're just gonna ignore that. Ignore everything. I was out here saying, this is Freelo, and I die to myself. Which, I mean, is probably an indictment on my feelings of how I feel about this room, it wasn't ads that killed me. It wasn't any knights that killed me. It wasn't even any of the mechanics. It was my own grenade launcher. Let's make sure that doesn't happen again, huh? All right, so how I said, let's make sure that doesn't happen again. All right, it's down to the wire once again. I just need one more charge and make sure I don't blow myself up. I make sure to finish off the knight properly. Of course, using a finisher, of course, babysit the totem because it's about to kill me, and I have to make sure it does not. So once that is done, I will then deposit the charge. But honestly, it probably might be worth it to have just deposited a charge instead of having to wait and babysit the totem, because that clears the encounter and that ends the Chamber of Suffering. I will say that the suffering was mostly self-inflicted, but okay, it might have been only self-inflicted seeing as I died only to myself, but what are you gonna do? Good thing I already lost Flawless. I do foresee that room in particular being annoying when trying to go for a flawless run. Of course, the real worry I have is this section, although if you do take your time, it does seem like this part is not that bad actually. The chest indicator icon is also noting that the chest is outside of this little room. So making sure that there's no hidden crawl space in the walls. Nope. It's on the outside. Confirmed. This brings us to the next section, and this section is really annoying. But it's not difficult. It's not fun. It's not good. It's really dark. You have to jump to the tower places, all while, the location of where you're supposed to head being completely obscured. And, okay. I thought I almost died just from failing to jump, but I do manage to pick up the chest. But here in the center, there are 3 symbols, and we do need to take note of symbols and go to the respective towers of those symbols. But where are those symbols on those towers is obscured, and trying to figure out where you need to go is really annoying. And so it just involves me running around in circles, avoiding the hive pendulum swingings and traversing on these tiny crevices in this cramped location. And all while I just have no idea of where I'm going. So it's just me going in circles over and over again, much like this dialogue I'm having with myself. I'm sure if you had a proper map, this place might make more sense, but I'm only getting a headache from doing nothing over and over again. I'm just running around. It's like, oh, hopefully I will find, I found the exit. No idea where the other 2 towers are and where to go. It's this is really bad. Like, oh my god, and I bounce off the ledge and die. There really needs to be like a proper map for this section. This section is just so bad. I don't even know like what I'm supposed to say about it. Like would you call this a jumping puzzle section? Not really. There's not really any puzzles. I mean, I guess it's not even that difficult to jump, like avoid any of the obstacles. Like the rotating blades with spikes are incredibly slow moving, and the pendulum is also this like super avoidable. Of course, me killing myself is still the largest threat here. In any case, while the previous location and encounter might have been the Chamber of Suffering, these are the Tunnels of Suffering. Wow, I really thought long and hard about that joke. It definitely was not the first thing that came to the top of my mind when I'm just yapping over here. I actually have no idea what I'm supposed to say about this section. Like, it's just running around until I eventually find the wizards and kill them. I literally have no idea how you're supposed to navigate this location. Like, I guess the runes outside the towers are the hint, but like, you still have to run around in these tunnels, and it's actually terrible. I'm not gonna lie. I'm sorry. This is not okay. All right, after unironically spending an hour in these tunnels, like, I'm not joking, like, me dying really cost me so much time because navigating this location was impossible. Like, I had no idea where I was going at all times, so it was an incredible waste of my time. I'm finally able to progress and head into the Cradle of Damnation. In any case, here we are, the final encounter. Finally have to deal with the boss, and this is where all the mechanics combine into one. I said all the mechanics, but it's only really the sword relic mechanic, and which was introduced to us at the very beginning. So it's cool to see this brought back. I do wish, some of the other mechanics were brought back. Like, imagine if there was also an Annihilator Totem along with, having to deal with the curses, stacks of the Curses of Suffering instant counter. Probably way too complicated and would be an absolute disaster to deal with for a boss fight, but it would be pretty neat to have. In any case, after obtaining a relic from one of the big dudes in the middle, we then have to take care of the 3 smaller enemies in the side pillars. This allows us to collect their respective void charges, and which allows us to disrupt the ritual taking place in the middle of the room. I don't get too far, and that's because I kill myself with my edge transits. As I probably would have died to the Giant Knight anyways, but of course I killed myself first with the edge transit. After obtaining the final void charge, I can go ahead and extinguish the flame and interrupt Zolmak's process of whatever he is doing. Immediately, I go ahead and use my super and just bring down as much DPS as I possibly can. So, in addition to this being a DPS phase, there is also a death condition assigned, and that is associated with the timer of the DPS. So, the green circle in the middle chart closes in and empowers the crystal in the middle, and after enough time, if I stay in the middle for too long, I will also die. So at this point, when you see the giant crystal glowing, inflamed, engulfed in hellfire, this is probably a sign that I should have left this circle. Of course, it annihilates me instead. Luckily, I was able to do a decent amount of damage to Zolmak, so while that wasn't exactly half its health, maybe with a little bit of optimization, it's close. So Zolmak is 2-phase, 3-phase maximum. It is unfortunate that I don't really have the best setup for doing DPS. Of course, now that I am aware of the death flag condition, I pay more attention to it. So while I probably do way less damage than I probably could, playing it safe is fine because I've already established that it's going to be 2 phase if I'm, good enough to execute properly, and 3 phase, and that 3rd phase would have had like me do like one damage. So it was good to just cut it short, play a little bit safe, and secure the 3 phase and make sure I don't die. Just playing safe, making sure I keep some good habits for when I need to start doing the flawless runs, because the amount of mistakes I make are pretty brutal, and the mistakes mainly involve me killing myself, but dying one way or another is not what I want to happen. Unfortunately, my second attempt during my second phase of Zolmak ends in tragedy as I wither away due to one of its sunspots. The amount of damage that the creep on the ground does is astounding. Like, I literally go from max health and drop down incredibly quickly, like so fast that I don't have the time to use Phoenix Dive in order to restore myself. So that attack where there's just fire on the ground left by Zolmak is incredibly dangerous, and is something else I need to make sure I look out for. That was, not something I was thinking of at all. Usually when it comes to staying alive, having Devour up basically allows me to, be pretty mindless about it. But when I am dealing with only Zolmak and I don't have any ads to take care of in the meantime in order to provide that buffer, it does get a bit dicey, so I do need to be more careful about my positioning. In any case, once I've established how to, enter DPS phase with Zolmak and how to do the mechanics, it's pretty straightforward of what I need to do. You just need to repeat the phases over and over again, so it now becomes less about, the skill involved in doing the mechanics, and it then becomes, the skill involved in endurance and being able to do enough phases in order to complete the dungeon. And there we go. That's it. Technically, my first solo dungeon official, Pit of Heresy, cleared. Boom. Easy. Did take 2 hours, and I literally over an hour of it, because I literally had to take a break, was me spent in the stupid tunnels. Absolutely disgusting.